So don't stress for a referral in the same way that you might for, an industry
Hmm.
job. The general advice is the best way to get in front of the hiring team is to get a
Yep.
referral. That's
Yep.
absolutely true for industry roles at most companies. In Amazon student programs, I think I would bias towards saying applying earlier is better
Mm.
than holding out for a referral.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
I've been doing a lot of content on Amazon throughout the whole time. I've been getting a lot of questions about our student programs. Most of the questions have been around, like, what to expect, what's the interview schedule process, online assessment, and all that. But the problem was that I wasn't actually hired as a from the student program myself, so I didn't really have the expertise. So today I have a special guest who can actually go through the whole process, and I think this person is the perfect person to go through this. Balaram, who is a senior recruiter on the student programs team. Welcome, Balaram, and thank you so much for coming to the channel again.
Yeah, Young, thank you for having me, and I'm excited to talk about the topic. So, just for context, student programs is a pretty wide umbrella within Amazon. We hire across a lot of different positions. We hire across multiple countries. So the space that I operate in that I can speak to is specifically non-tech MBA within North America. Now that sounds pretty specific, but there's a lot of candidates, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers that probably fall into that space and may have questions or maybe looking to go that route in the future.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that. But I do have counterparts who uh, manage student programs in Asia, in Europe. And then in addition to that, within North America, we all have our counterparts, outside of our specific recruiters that kind of build those processes by which the students and candidates move through the interview process. We really work on gaining those applications. But we do also work very closely with like our scheduling team, who
Mhm.
for any of our applicants, they'll get in touch with them after completing the online assessment and before their interviews. That'll be their main point of contact. And then after their interviews, for those of our candidates that receive offers, we have another team that is really focused on their offers and onboarding. So
Mhm.
because I work pretty closely with them, I do have some insight that I could share. And then on top of that, my specific team is a part of each of these stages, but is specifically focused on how can we help candidates understand their opportunities and help them apply and start their journey in student programs interviewing.
Yeah, so Bellar, can you share a little bit about the process and then the timeline for both full-time employees and then the internship program?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a key point that you just touched on. We hire both full-time and intern. The process for that is actually very similar for both full-time and intern, but I want to start with the different opportunities. So
Mm.
we're looking specifically at MBA in North America. And for these candidates, these are candidates that are currently in an MBA or a master's program. They have at least 3 years work experience. And in one particular role, we do look for those with a tech background. So let me talk about those roles first of
Yeah.
all. We have a single application link. So whether you're going for full-time or you're going for intern, there is an application page, a single application for all of our MBA and master's roles full-time, and there's a separate one for intern. Now you'll notice in that application page, it lays out the different roles that we have. So I'll walk through those really quickly. We
Yep.
have 2 leadership development programs,
Mm.
the retail leadership development program and
Mm.
the finance leadership development program. Your viewers may be aware at this point at Amazon, we have a pretty fluid work culture. You can really carve your own career path here. So what makes these programs stand out, whether you are in the retail leadership side or the finance side, is you will be starting out with a cohort of other MBA master's graduates. So
Mhm.
it's great for kind of building that network. You get more specialized training, especially during that first few weeks of onboarding, and then you also get more support in your transition across roles in your first rotation. Now, the other roles that we have are not part of like a formal development program,
Yeah.
but given Amazon's culture, like whether you come in these different roles, you can still find yourself rotating and kind of growing in that manner. So the other roles that we have underneath the MBA student programs umbrella is senior product manager. Senior product manager technical, which is similar to senior product manager. However, you'll be working on very technical products and you'll be expected to work with engineers one-on-one. This is the role where we want you to have some sort of STEM background and be able to show that you can work with engineers, whatever background you come from. Then the other roles are senior program manager. And we also have senior marketing manager, which is we have a senior marketing manager role in the retail program as well, but this is kind of broken out. So now, whether you are a first year MBA or master student, or you are in your second year and you're graduating, these roles are all applicable to you. They're all available via internship and for full-time. If you are a candidate that maybe applied for the internship and was not moved through to the end, or you didn't receive an offer, you can still reapply in your second year. You can apply for full-time. And so basically the process is that you make that application, and then usually within a few days, we are able to get you the online assessments. You'll receive an email, and that will have a link to this assessment. And we'll talk a little bit more about it. I think there can be some questions around that. But the online assessment is that first stage, sort of in the interview process, if you will. It's completely done virtually, and it puts you in different scenarios and asks you different questions that allows us to gauge at a very broad level if you are a fit for Amazon as a whole through MBA student program. So it allows us to kind of look at certain leadership principles, your growth potential, et cetera. So yeah, after completing the online assessment, assuming that you pass, you will then be in a stage where student programs will have your application, your resume, as well as the results of this online assessment. And that allows us to determine if we will place the candidate in queue for interviews. Also at that point, we know the candidate's preference. So you don't really need to worry about, if you specifically want to go for, say, a program manager role, you're not as interested in maybe finance. It's still the same application, same online assessment. However, at the end of it, you will stack rank what your preferences are in terms of roles. And we always do our best to evaluate you and assess you for that top pick. So it's important here. I would say one tip for candidates is sometimes there can be a tendency to kind of not pay much attention to this stage, or maybe pick a role that's not so well aligned to how you structure your resume. That may put you at a disadvantage because for this process to be the most seamless, we want to make sure that we're looking at you based on what your top preference is. So definitely take some time and really understand what these roles are. We do have some on-demand resources that have webinars that go in depth on each of these different career paths. So definitely understand them and rank accordingly with those that align with your passion and also your background that you would be able to make a strong case for. But once that is completed, then you are in interview queue. And at that stage, we have a very high volume of candidates, but we are always working to make this process as seamless as possible. So move candidates through the interview queue. Our scheduling team then reaches out to align the candidates with certain days and times that works for them, and align that to what we have availability for so that we can complete these interviews. Now, the interviews themselves happen over a day. The models, we're always inventing and simplifying and trying to make the models more conducive to what students need. As of this season, the typical model is that it is 4 interviews back to back with some breaks in between for full-time, and 2 interviews for intern. And then our goal is to get the candidate their decision within 5 business days following that. So that's kind of that very high level picture of what that whole process looks like.
I love how Amazon is always able, providing feedback within the 5 business days timeline. In terms of the whole timeline, I know that we are still interviewing for, let's say, some of the candidates for student programs at this moment, but just want to learn a little bit more about the timeline as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So We follow the typical seasonality that we see in master's and MBA programs. That being said, we try to be flexible and really account for candidates' needs and the growing needs of our business. So typically, we focus on full-time hiring in the fall. That's when you'll see the bulk of those interviews are scheduled. And then the job posting is generally available early in season, with interviews taking place through December, and if needed, into early spring as well. We usually shift our focus into intern hiring in January. If you're a first year MBA or a master's student looking for that internship, you should plan to apply in the late fall, and then you'll be interviewing for your internship between January and late spring. So the process is similar, though, or I would say identical between full-time and intern, in that you still have those same major steps of application, online assessment, and then interview.
That makes a lot of sense. So I get this question a lot from people. So is there like a, if you don't hear back from the company or Amazon by, end of what, it's you're out for good, or is it like rolling base or something like that, that if there's more open space at the end, you get to, get into the company? Like, I just want to learn a little bit more about that part.
Yeah, so we absolutely recommend following the application deadlines that are given by your schools. They should be kind of on top of that and able to communicate that to you. Now, that being said, there are those cases where we may not be able to get through our entire interview queue, say in the fall. We'll pick up in the spring for certain candidates. And there are some cases where candidates are applying late, but we're still able to accept them. So keep in mind that we do try to be flexible for candidates. Of course, that early application is really going to help you move through in the most expedited manner. Now, as far as hearing back from Amazon, the best place to really have a good grasp on this is the Amazon.jobs portal. That's where you can go into your profile and you can check your status. So unless you've received an email stating otherwise, if you are in process, that status will stay under consideration. And so you will be able to get kind of that up-to-date status directly from there. Now, on top of that, you can stay in touch with us in terms of, we have office hours that we tend to set up where candidates can come and drop in, and that's something we'll communicate to you, or we'll come to you via your schools. So keep in mind that that is another resource that's available, where it's a great way that you can chat with us and learn a little bit more about your application and what the journey through this student programs application process will look like for you.
Awesome. Yeah. So one of the most common questions, like literally the most common questions I get from, all around people, is about the online assessment. So can you tell me a little bit more about the online assessment, what to expect and all that?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. At a high level, there are several parts to the online assessment. So the first part is the job simulation. Now, this section helps us get a feel for the candidate's decision-making, prioritization skills, reasoning skills, etc. The candidate's given a variety of scenarios, receiving emails and pings and going into meetings where they're presented with different challenges or asked about how you would respond to XYZ fire drill or something that may happen. Now, the second section is what we call leadership potential indicators. So this section includes questions of how you would operate as a leader in different settings at Amazon. So a little bit more theoretical, a little bit more asking qualitative questions about different scenarios or different situations, and gauging how you would respond. And typically this is like a response, and then if you would agree with the response, disagree on a sliding scale. So it helps us get a sense of leadership style. And then the final section here is the OA, or the Online Assessment Career Preferences Survey. That's essentially where you self-select your role preferences, which we talked about. So I do want to stress that those roles carry a lot of weight, and we absolutely try to do our due diligence on ensuring that we are able to evaluate you based on your top choice. Now, there are those cases where a candidate may pick a role that is just not in line with their background, but perhaps another role which is lower on their ranking is a fit. And so in those cases, we do also try to reach out and just make sure the
Gotcha.
candidate's aware that maybe they're a fit for this other path. But I think educating yourself ahead of time on those different roles that we have, it's just a great way to make sure that your application keeps moving through smoothly and doesn't hit any road bumps.
Yeah. So how do you actually study for these online assessments? Like, is there any known materials out there or resources that we can look into?
Yeah, it's a great question as well. It's something that we also consider at the start of our recruiting season, and so we do have an on-demand resource that we'll share, and that has a series of different seminars that we've done over the summer online. We've launched another one over the winter, and so it touches on a lot of interesting topics on roles, et cetera. But one of them, which was very well received, was on how do you ace the online assessment. So. Essentially, that resource will make it available for viewers of this video. I do want to highlight, though, that when studying for the online assessment, first off, it's not something that we expect you to need to prepare for. We set it up in such a way that candidates should be able to jump into it, bring their best selves, and that is enough for us. There's no specific industry or business knowledge required.
Okay.
Now, as far as like tips or tricks to pass COA, I would say that just kind of keeping in mind the format of it, which we've gone over, and then also the timeline is helpful. So it is about a 60 to 90 minute assessment for most for most candidates. It needs to be completed in one sitting as well. So make sure that you have a quiet space set up, that you can focus. You again don't really need to focus on preparing per se, but just like everything at Amazon, our leadership principles are at the core of this assessment, as well as your interviews, as well as how we operate, right? So if you understand our leadership principles, then that'll kind of help you. It'll help you guide your decision making in the job simulation section, which carries a lot of weight in the online assessment. So yeah, we'll share a link to that resource that goes in detail. We can share a link to the leadership principles as well.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Okay, so I know. So we covered online assessment, and then the next step is the interview phase. Can you tell me a little bit more about the interview prep, or just the interview in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So as mentioned, they're in a block. We try to get them done in one go, some breaks in between. Now, one thing I will say about the interviews that also applies to the online assessment is the leadership principles are at the core of them. So most of the competencies that we look for are those leadership principles. Now, if you really want to use your time to most efficiently going into these interviews, think about the narratives that you're bringing, and now think about our leadership principles and try to make sure that you can illustrate those leadership principles with the narratives that you have. Think about the role that you're applying for, and know that in MBA student programs, we don't require you to have been a product manager to go into a product manager role. But what we are going to do is we're going to look at those leadership principles, those key competencies of product management that we think is important for someone, whatever background they're coming from, to be able to launch their career as a product manager. We're going to ask about that. So if you can really bake that into your narratives, to your star stories, that's going to allow you to really give the interviewers what they're looking for and show that you really are a fit for the role that you have applied for. So so keep in mind that our structure for the interviews, but then also as you prepare, have leadership principles tied to your star stories. Be prepared for our follow-up questions, and when the interview is complete, you will be hearing from us quite shortly. Our goal is to get all candidates their decision within 5 business days. And at that point, you'll have the offers and onboarding team will be your points of contact from then all the way up until your start date for all things related to your offer, relocation, onboarding, etc.
That is awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I think those were pretty much all the questions I had around the whole process and stuff. Thank you so much. Are there anything else that you can share for people who are, trying to get into this student programs and trying to get into Amazon?
Yeah, let me summarize some of the key points we talked about. I'll mention a few other things as well. So I think first thing is going back to leadership principles. They're at the core of our business. They're used in our everyday decision making, and they make up a large portion of the interview process. So understanding the leadership principles is going to help you through all of the stages of your application process. Everything from crafting your resume to the online assessment to the interviews. Now, I think another helpful thing about if you're planning to go this route in applying to Amazon as a master's MBA student, understanding the leadership principles helps you understand our culture. And I think that's really important. And as a recruiter in the space, like I'll say that Amazon is unique. We have a peculiar culture, and that is really defined by these leadership principles. So by understanding them, not only is it going to help you in the process, should you choose to apply and interview with us, but it'll also help you determine if it's a fit for you and if it's something that you're really excited by. So that's the first piece. Another one is apply early. We go through applicants as they apply. They're going to get their online assessments earlier if they're applying earlier. So your career resource center should be able to notify you once a job posting is live. So for example, right now, we still have some full-time roles that we're hiring for. We are still taking some rolling applications, and we are in full swing with internship interviews. So applications are still coming through on that end as well. So keep in mind that those early applications, they'll help you get through our preliminary stages earlier. Another one, this is kind of a detail, but sometimes I see students are holding off on their application in order to get a referral. While referrals are great, and I think it's awesome to network with alumni and friends and colleagues at Amazon, it's not crucial to have a referral. I would say I would prefer a candidate applies earlier rather than has a referral, just because everyone who meets the qualifications of the role is going to get an assessment. They're going to move through the process. So don't stress for a referral in the same way that you might for an industry job, right? We always tell the general advice is the best way to get in front of the hiring team is to get a referral. That's absolutely true for industry roles at most companies. In Amazon student programs, I think I would bias towards saying applying earlier is better than holding out for a referral.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And then the last piece is just understand the roles, right? So once you understand the leadership principle and the culture, then dive into our different roles. You're making one application to start with, but at the end of the day, there are up to 6 opportunities that are available for you that you can start your career here as. So watch the webinars that we have available, a network with alumni who may be in those roles and really get a good sense for which one or maybe a few are the top picks for you. And then that'll allow you to really rank them accordingly so that you can move forward in the most relevant way.
Yeah, no, those were awesome tips, especially like the referral part, because I had no idea. But that's awesome. Balor, I think those were all the questions I had. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Looking forward to speaking again soon.
Thank you.